8 rappers who grew up in small towns. When you think of your average rapper, the first images that come to mind are probably expensive jewelry, fast cars, and luxurious houses. And where does one find these kind of things? Well, in a big city, of course. In hip-hop's youth, most rappers hail from big cities, and the industry naturally divided itself into an East Coast versus West Coast mentality. Nearly every famous rapper claimed either Los Angeles, New York City, or Philadelphia. However, as the world has begun to change and social media has given us access to the entire world at our fingertips, the rap industry has begun to discover talent from all across the United States, and even the world. As a result, famous rappers are no longer required to trek to a big city to find a fan base. In fact, some of today's most famous rappers come from towns that you may not have even heard of, let alone know a celebrity who grew up there. Before we get started, make sure you like the video and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Now, here are 8 rappers who grew up in small towns. Number 8, Kodak Black. Being a Florida local, Kodak Black is arguably the most famous rapper to hail from the Sunshine State, besides the obvious names like Rick Ross and T-Pain. Kodak was born and raised in Pompano Beach, a town of 112,000 residents, about 30 miles outside of Miami. While the area is known for its high concentration of retirees and a strong real estate market, the other side of the coin is that Pompano Beach has a violent crime rate, twice the national average. Though it can seem like an idyllic beach town at first glance, the area has a high income disparity, and Kodak was raised in a public housing project called Golden Acres. It was here that Kodak would find himself in and out of legal trouble, including stays in a juvenile detention center 3 times in a year. Kodak began to see mainstream success in late 2015, at the age of 19, when his song Skirt went viral, and he was featured on the song Lockjaw featuring French Montana. According to the local government, the town of Pompano Beach is currently, quote, in a redevelopment process to revitalize its beachfront and historic downtown. Unfortunately, it's unlikely that Kodak will get to see the changes. He's awaiting sentencing for various charges that could land him as much as 7 years in prison. Number 7, Soulja Boy. Soulja Boy's early life was as fast-paced as his meteoric rise to fame. Originally born in Chicago, he moved to Atlanta at the age of 6. By the time he was 14 years old, he would move to Batesville, Mississippi. It was here, in Batesville, that Soulja became fixated on making music. He credits his father's support for much of his early musical success, as it was his father that provided him with the recording equipment for his music. In a town like Batesville, which has a population of just 7,463 residents, a young Soulja Boy had very little to do besides work on his music. The entire town of Batesville is recorded at just over 11 square miles, and the closest major city is Memphis of all places. It was in this town that Soulja would pen his mega hit Crank That, using social media to promote his music in an essentially unprecedented way. Soulja would find himself signed to Interscope within a year of the song's release, catapulting him to the forefront of the dance rap craze. Years down the line, we saw many rappers become famous at a young age just by utilizing the internet, but Soulja was definitely the first case. He never stopped being a trailblazer either, eventually becoming the first rapper to release their own gaming console, but we know how that went. Number 6, Lil Yachty. If Lil Yachty's brand of melodic, bright bubblegum trap gave you the impression that he grew up inside a suburb, you would be 100% correct. Yachty hails from Mableton, Georgia, a small town about 14 miles outside of the city of Atlanta. While many people consider the area to be a suburban extension of the city itself, the 37,000-person town is considered to be a standalone municipality. Despite the bustling hip-hop scene in Atlanta, Yachty felt his style would be better suited in a different city. So in 2015, at only 18 years old, he packed up and moved to New York to pursue his music career. After working as a model in the Yeezy Season 3 fashion show, Yachty released his first mixtape. The album generated some buzz, which he capitalized on the release of Broccoli, the single that would become a smash hit and propel him to stardom, eventually becoming an XXL freshman, sharing the cover with the likes of 21 Savage and Kodak Black, and then getting into a slight feud with Kodak. Since his rise in the public eye, Yachty has lived in Los Angeles, New York, and Atlanta, and has since not moved back to his town of Mableton. Number 5, Post Malone. Post Malone's music isn't the only thing about him that bends genres. Upon your first glance at the rapper, it might be kind of hard to nail down where he comes from. His face tattoos and braids might hint a city like Atlanta, while his fashion sense screams Texas ranch hand. However, neither of those answers are the whole truth. In reality, Post was born and spent his early childhood in Syracuse, New York. Syracuse is a city in upstate New York, and by age 9, Post's family had moved away from the city to Grapevine, Texas. While Syracuse has over 1 million inhabitants, Grapevine has only 43,000. There, Post spent most of his adolescence, and eventually enrolled in Tarrant County College, a community college in Fort Worth. Shortly after, he dropped out, picked up his bags, and went to Los Angeles to pursue his musical career. He wasted no time either, having released White Iverson the same year, which is the song that introduced many of us to Posty. To this day, he is still a resident in Los Angeles, and recently purchased a $3 million Utah mansion. But there's no real sign of him returning to Texas. That is, unless Joe Rogan convinces him. Number 4, Freddie Gibbs. Gary, Indiana is no stranger to famous residents. The entire Jackson 5, including Michael Jackson, were all born and raised in Gary, Indiana. But less famously, so is the rapper Freddie Gibbs. Gary was once a prosperous town due to its high concentration of steel mills in the late 1950s and early 1960s. However, when steel started to become imported from other countries, Gary's economy crumbled, leaving many of its residents in poverty for years to come. Gibbs' first chance at leaving Gary came in 2006, when he was signed to Interscope Records. However, the label changed ownership slightly after the deal was executed, and he was dropped from the label. It took some time for Freddie to rebuild, dropping 10 mixtapes before eventually becoming an XXL freshman in 2010. That year might be surprising because, arguably, it wasn't until 2014 that he became a well-known name within hip-hop, with the release of Pinata. Since then, he's been steadily climbing and has only gotten more popular, having recently signed with Warner Brothers Records, and released his highest-selling project yet, Bandana. Number 3, Chris Brown. If you're an aspiring superstar, working at a gas station doesn't seem like the best way to get discovered. But Chris Brown, one of the modern era's most famous entertainers, began his career in that exact way. Brown was born and raised in the smallest town on this list, Tappahannock, Virginia. 44 miles northeast of Richmond, the town is named after the indigenous people of that area and has a population of about 2,300 people. In a meeting by pure chance, Chris met the Hit Mission team while working at his father's gas station in 2002. Chris was only 13, but the production team recognized his talent and helped him develop a demo package that would eventually contribute to his deal with Jive Records. In 2005, at the age of 15, Brown made the decision to drop out of high school and move to New York to pursue his career. His debut album, which released in November of 2005, debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 and quickly established Brown as a force to be reckoned with. Today, Brown is one of the world's best-selling artists, having moved over 140 million units. And while a lot of people assume he's from LA, it really all started in Virginia. Number 2, Lil Dicky. If I asked you to name the first rapper you thought of after hearing the name Lil Dicky, no one would answer Dave East. However, the two rappers actually have more in common than you think. In 2006, Lil Dicky and Dave East were actually enrolled in the University of Richmond, Virginia at the same time. Ironically, 10 years later, the two would share the cover of XXL, as they were named as part of the XXL freshman class. But before he was an XXL freshman, and even before he was studying advertising at the University of Richmond, Dicky was growing up in Cheltenham Township. Located 64 miles north of Philadelphia, this Pennsylvania town has a mere 36,000 people. Strangely enough, this town is no stranger to local celebrities, with Bill Cosby also being a native. After graduating from college, Dicky worked in advertising while honing his rapping ability. His first mixtape took 2 years to finish, and shortly after he found viral success with his comedic song Ex-Boyfriend. As his career began to blossom, he made the difficult decision to move from the Bay Area to Hollywood, leaving behind his significant other, as he details on the track Molly. At number 1, we have J. Cole. In 2020, you probably know exactly where J. Cole is from. Fayetteville, North Carolina is a town of 210,000 people, with a population density of 1,400 residents per mile, about 65 times less than New York City, but it's better known as the Ville. due to Cole's tireless efforts throughout his career to draw attention to the city, its economic disparity, and the plight of its inhabitants. But before Cole was navigating his childhood in North Carolina, he was actually born on a military base in Frankfurt, Germany. However, by the time he was 8 months old, his mother had moved him and his older brother to Fayetteville. Cole, whose career began to blossom just slightly before the rise of social media, actually did leave Fayetteville for a big city. He attended college at St. John's University in New York City, where he made it his mission to track down and impress Rockefeller Records boss Jay-Z. As you probably know, his mission was successful, and Cole grew into one of the most commercially successful rappers of the modern era. However, along the way, he found himself missing his roots and relocated back to Fayetteville, where he is now actively engaged in his community. In 2014, he purchased his childhood home, the same house that inspired his Grammy-winning album 2014 Forest Hills Drive, with hopes of turning it into a community center for struggling single mothers. So did any of the rappers on this list surprise you? Are you from one of the small towns mentioned in this video? Let me know in the comments section. And before you leave, don't forget to click the like button and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.